What if the greatest mystery in Christianity isn't buried here in earth, but erased from history? Today we chase a dangerous question, not because it's true, not because it's proven, but because it was believed by real people living in the centuries just after Jesus. A question so explosive, the church called it heresy. What if Jesus had a wife, a child, a bloodline? This isn't just the stuff of conspiracy theories and thrillers. Gospels were written about it, teachings suppressed, entire groups wiped out for even entertaining the idea. This is just a theory, a rabbit hole, but that doesn't mean it's worthless, because even the strangest ideas tell us something vital, how those before us understood the sacred. So let's begin with something that the church tried to suppress for thousands of years, and in 1945 was rediscovered and thrust into the view of the world. The church couldn't hide it this time forever. Sorry to interrupt your video. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you'd give the little subscribe button a little tickle, would much appreciate it. Anyway, back to the video. The Gospel of Philip. Was Mary his wife? In the Gospel of Philip, an early Christian text found in the Nag Hammadi library, we read this: "The Saviour loved Mary more than all the disciples and used to kiss her often on the mouth." The Mary in question is Mary Magdalene. The text goes on to say that the disciples were jealous of her and that Jesus called her his koinonos, a Greek word meaning companion or consort. Some argue it means nothing more than trusted friend, but in ancient Gnostic and Jewish circles, it also meant spiritual spouse, a counterpart in divine union. To the Gnostic idea, the union of male and female was the ultimate symbol of restoration, of harmony with the divine. This is supported in the apocryphal book of John, which we are going to get into. I'm currently researching this topic right now. However, being that there's 4 versions of it and in different languages, I guess it somewhat points out its popularity. However, it makes it all the more complicated to dissect. However, it is coming, I assure you. So, this has created a question. Could this be why Jesus loved her more than the rest? Could this be the beloved disciple? And if so, could she have carried more than just his teachings? Many modern scholars dismiss this as symbolic, a spiritualized metaphor, but even symbols come from somewhere. The Holy Grail, a womb, not a cup. Most people know the Holy Grail as the cup Jesus drank from at the Last Supper, but in medieval Europe, especially in southern France, the Grail became something else, something alive. In 12th century French romances, the Grail is linked to Mary Magdalene. Some stories even claim she fled Jerusalem with a child and arrived in Gaul. The phrase sang real, the royal blood, was interpreted by some as not a holy object, but a family line descending from Christ himself. It's easy to dismiss as legend, but legend often preserves older truths in symbolic form. So could these stories be echoes of suppressed Gnostic ideas, stories where Jesus survives the crucifixion and the Grail becomes the womb of that unborn child? Now, just a note here, the Priory of Sion and related claims are modern fabrications, but the idea of a Jesus bloodline existed long before them, in whispers, in heresies, and in outlawed scriptures. Mary Magdalene, apostle, not prostitute. It wasn't until 591 AD that Pope Gregory officially labelled Mary Magdalene a prostitute. Before that, she was revered. In fact, one of the most important apocryphal Gospels is named after her, the Gospel of Mary. Now, an apocryphal gospel is a writing that was revered by some early Christians, but later rejected by the institutional church, often because it presented a vision of Jesus or the apostles that didn't align with emerging orthodoxy. In the Gospel of Mary, she isn't just a follower, she's the primary witness to Jesus' teachings. She comforts the other disciples. She reveals hidden knowledge passed on to her alone. Peter himself says, "Sister, we know the Saviour loved you more than the rest of women. Tell us the words of the Saviour which you remember." She's called the apostle to the apostles, and yet the church erased her, recasting her as the sinful woman who washed Jesus' feet. The question is why? Was it because a female apostle threatens the hierarchy, a female consort threatens orthodoxy, and a pregnant woman carrying the blood of God threatens everything? So what happened to Mary Magdalene? If Mary Magdalene was more than a repentant sinner, if she was an apostle, a teacher, maybe even something more, what happened to her? After the crucifixion, most of the canonical Gospels go silent, but the apocryphal texts and later Christian traditions tell a different story. According to Eastern Orthodox belief, Mary continued to preach, eventually travelling to Ephesus with the Apostle John. Some legends say that she died there, and her relics were later brought to Constantinople. But in Western Europe, a much more mysterious tale emerged. In the traditions of southern France, especially in Provence, Mary Magdalene didn't just vanish. She arrived, fleeing persecution in Judah. She crossed the sea in a rudderless boat with no sail, guided by divine will. With her companions, possibly Lazarus, Martha, and a young girl said to be her daughter or servant. In this tradition, she preached the gospel in the region for decades, eventually retreating to a cave called La Sainte Baume. French, I'll write it on the screen here. Where she lived as a hermit in penance and prayer until her death. By the Middle Ages, she was one of the most venerated saints in France. Pilgrims flocked to her supposed relics at the Basilica of Saint Maximin la Sainte Baume. Again, I'll put it on screen. And what of her writings? Her gospel, the Gospel of Mary, was lost for over 1,500 years. We only rediscovered it in the late 19th century in a damaged papyrus codex found in Egypt. Large portions are missing, but what survives is astonishing. It doesn't begin with a miracle, but with a conversation between Mary and the grieving disciples. After Jesus' departure, she comforts them. She reveals a vision. She teaches about the soul's ascent beyond material powers. It's Gnostic in tone, but deeply human. Even today, her legacy continues. In Eastern Christianity, she's known as equal to the apostles. In Catholicism, she's the apostle to the apostles. In esoteric and New Age circles, she's revered as the embodiment of divine feminine wisdom, Sophia herself reborn. Across the centuries, she has been recast: sinner, saint, bride, mystic, apostle, goddess. Each version says more about the people telling the story than about the woman herself. But one truth remains: Mary Magdalene refused to be erased. The heretical keepers of the bloodline. If the idea of Jesus and Mary Magdalene as husband and wife, or even parents, sounds like modern fantasy, then you may be surprised, because this wasn't born from Dan Brown. It wasn't conjured in the conspiracy forum. Versions of this story were kept alive for nearly 2,000 years. by those deemed heretics, mystics, and rebels. Let's meet some of them. In the 12th to 13th century southern France, the Cathars preached a form of Christianity radically different from Rome. They believed in a dualistic world. Spirit was pure, matter was evil, and they held secret teachings, Gnosis, about Jesus and Mary. Some Cathar traditions hinted that Mary Magdalene brought a divine lineage to France. In fact, the very region where she was believed to have landed was the heartland of Catharism. The church didn't just disagree, they launched a full-scale crusade. Entire towns were burned, thousands killed. Why? Because the Cathars claimed the church had hidden the truth, that their version of Jesus and his companion was closer to the original faith. Then there's the Knights Templar. Founded in 1119, the Templars were warrior monks, sworn to protect Christian pilgrims, but rumours surrounded them. Some whispered they found secrets beneath Solomon's temple. Others claimed they worshipped a divine feminine or possessed hidden gospel. In the 14th century, the French king, in alliance with the Pope, arrested and tortured the Templars, charging them with heresy, idol worship and blasphemy. Many were burned alive. Among the stranger accusations, so that they knew of a bloodline, that they venerated a head, possibly female, possibly even Mary herself. Are these just legends layered into legend? Perhaps, but it's from this milieu that later myths of a sacred bloodline emerged. Then there's the esoteric Christians and modern mystics. Throughout the Renaissance and into modern times, secret societies like the Rosicrucians and later Theosophists resurrected these old stories. They saw Mary Magdalene not as a discarded disciple, but as the new keeper of lost wisdom, Sophia incarnate. In the 20th century, fringe scholars and mystics began to piece things together. Texts like the Gospel of Mary, Philip, and Thomas, painting a very different picture of early Christianity. They didn't just ask if Jesus had a child, they asked, what if the church erased the divine feminine? Today, this tradition lives on in alternative spiritualities, neo-Gnostic communities, and yes, even in pop culture. Now, we don't know what the truth is, but we do know this. From the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of France, from secret manuscripts to whispered traditions, people kept this story alive because they believed it meant something. Not just about Jesus, but about what it means to be human and divine. Conclusion. What if this is all true? Let's pause. I'm not claiming that Jesus had children, and we are not proving secret lineages, but what we are showing is that many early Christians, real communities living in the shadows of the apostles, believed that this was possible. They wrote gospels about it. They were hunted and killed for it. Their stories were burned, but not all of them were lost. Maybe Jesus was fully divine. Maybe, just maybe, he was also fully human. And if he was human, why wouldn't he have loved? Why wouldn't he have lived? And why wouldn't he have left a legacy, not just in spirit, but in blood? You don't have to believe any of this, but you should know that it was believed, because history isn't made only of truth, it's also made of the things we're too afraid to ask. If this episode sparked something in you, curiosity, questions, doubt, that's exactly the point of these videos. Leave a comment. What do you think? Could Jesus have had a family? Was Mary Magdalene more than just what we're told? Subscribe to the Obelisk, where we chase forbidden faiths and buried beliefs. One heresy at a time. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next one.